Okay. Hello everyone. We have a lot to cover, so let's start with the beginning. Our beginning today starts with MUG, M-U-G. Let me just log in into my laptop. Thank you. Our MUG for today will consist of one sentence only. So MUG stands for mechanics, usage, and grammar. And we are going to cover only one sentence instead of two. Usually we cover two. So our sentences today are about two boys. And these two boys are playing ball. So one of them is throwing the ball to the other one. And the other one does not really catch the ball, but he trips on his shoelace, falls, and breaks his arms. Did I just show you something? Breaks his arm. That was his finger. So, two boys, three actions. Boy's number one name is Craig. Boy's number two name is Travis. So now we can read the sentence very carefully and try to find either grammar or punctuation or spelling or usage mistakes. Excuse me. I just had a wonderful lunch, so sorry about that. In the final seconds of the game, Craig passed the ball to Travis, and then he tripped over his shoelace and broke his arm. So you probably remember what I told you before I read the sentence. And then when I read the sentence, you probably think, oh my goodness, it's not the same. It's not the same what she was telling us. Because important part here is who falls and breaks the arm. Okay, so once again, let's imagine two boys. Craig over here, Travis over here, playing together. One of them throws the ball to the other one. This one trips over the shoelace, falls, and breaks his arm. So this is Craig, and this is Travis. Now, the sentence says, let me read it again, and then you will see where the mistake comes from. In the final seconds of the game, Craig passed the ball to Travis, and then he tripped over his shoelace and broke his arm. So, when we use the word he, the pronoun he, in the second part of the sentence, it refers to Craig and not to Travis. The way the sentence is structured, Craig passed the ball to Travis and then he tripped over his shoelace. So if we read the sentence the way it's written here, we need to understand that Craig did three things. Threw the ball, tripped over, broke his arm. But actually that's not what happened. He did only one thing. Excuse me, and that boy did two. So we need to correct the sentence so it answers or responds correctly to what we're trying to say. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. How many boys? I do not know if you see or not, but it doesn't really matter. I will be asking you questions anyway. So how many boys were there? Two. What are their names? Craig and Travis. What is Craig doing? He's playing ball. With whom? He's playing ball with Travis. So now we need to figure out what did Craig do once again? So what was the action? Craig, subject, and what is the predicate? What is the action of that subject? So what did he do? Passed the ball. Now let's do the same thing for Trevas. Trevas, the subject. And there are two predicates that are referring to Trevas. So what are those predicates? Tripped over his shoelace, and second, broke his arm. Wonderful. So two actions. Next, when we're using the word he, we are referring to Craig. Craig, blank, 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 whatever he did. Trevas, who. So if we want to correct the sentence, and it doesn't matter if you don't see, but if you see, it's wonderful. So if we want to correct the sentence, we need to use the word who rather than he. Okay, he or who, who. So when we're using the word he, we refer to Craig. And when we're using the word who, we refer to Trevas, according to the sentence structure. So our sentence needs to sound in the final seconds of the game, comma, Craig passed the ball to Trevas, comma, who tripped over his shoelace and broke his arm. All right? So you probably paid attention to the commas when I was talking about commas. We need to understand now why we were using these commas. The first part of the sentence is an introductory part of the sentence. And it sounds like in the final seconds of the game, comma. There is no subject and there is no predicate. There is no doer and there is nothing that this doer would be doing. So it's not a real sentence. It's an introductory phrase. There is usually a comma that goes at the end of the introductory phrase before, the actual sentence. So that's our first comma. Our second comma goes after Trevas, and I think it's already there, so you do not really need to correct anything. But just in case, we need to be able to explain even commas that are there to know why it's correct. Or maybe the comma doesn't need to be there, so then we need to X it out. Okay, so we see two sentences here. The first one, Craig passed the ball to Trevas, and the second one, who tripped over his shoelace and broke his arm. So the sentence who tripped over his shoelace and broke his arm cannot stand by itself without the first part of that sentence, the main part of the sentence. And to separate them, we have a comma between, okay? So what I want you to do now is to either press the pause button and make your corrections in your mug and put your mug aside, or continue listening to the whole lesson, and at the end you will do your assignments at the very end of the video. So there are two choices. Choice number one, press the pause button now, and finish your mug corrections. So it needs to be sentence number one only. You don't do sentence number two. Write your name, today's date on the top of the paper, and put the paper for now aside. Later on, it will go to the binder. So having said that, we're moving on. And if you chose to press the pause button, wonderful. If you did not, it doesn't really matter because you will need to do the assignments later anyways. So our assignment number 2, we're moving on to the summary of our Tequila Mockingbird. So our story right now, we are on chapter number 9, believe it or not, and I hope you all remember what happened before. So we need to refresh our minds what specifically were happening at chapter number 9. Chapter number 9 starts with the depiction of the school setting, and then there is Scout. Scout is at school, and she is learning a lot of things. She is not really learning her reading, math, or writing, but she's learning life. Why? Well, the teacher that she has is a young teacher, and she does not understand how Scout is learning. She does not understand Scout's abilities and her personality, and she wants to teach her own way, and she is very disappointed that Scout already knows so much, because Scout came and she was able to read and write. But that is just the beginning of the problems there are a lot of problems that are happening in chapter number 9. So problem number 1 is Scout realizes that there are students in her class that disagree with her racial perspective. Okay? So to put it in a more simple words, there are students in her class who accused her and her father of being friends with the black population of the city. Her father, you probably know, he is a lawyer, and he chose to defend a black guy who was accused of raping a white woman. He did not really do it. He didn't really rape her. The father of the girl actually raped her. But the accusation was there in the whole city because of the racial discrimination and racial prejudice was ready to accuse the Tom Robinson, that's the name of the person. So that's the conflict number 1. So the conflict number 1 is that Scout in school hears a lot of accusations and bad language directed to her because of her father. And she also knows that her father told her that the case that he takes to defend the accused Tom Robinson is a case that he knows that he will lose as a lawyer, and yet he takes it because he says that it is important for him to, he can lose the case, but he does not want to lose his self-respect. So he believes that if he does not take this case, if he is not even going to try to defend the innocent, excuse me, the innocently accused person, then he will not lose the case, but he will lose his self-respect. So then later on in the chapter, we're moving towards Christmas time, and Scout, he is, okay, first of all, there are two places that the writer is taking us on Christmas in chapter 9. Place number 1 is still in the house, but a guest of the family arrives, and his name is Uncle Jack. we see a lot of relatives in this chapter. Excuse me. So what does Uncle Jack do? He comes and he tries to correct Scout's manners. Scout started using bad language because she goes to school, she learns bad language at school, and at times she uses it at home as well to emphasize her emotions. Okay, then Uncle Jack says, okay, there was a conversation between him and her, and you can read, of course, or you have read about it in the chapter more detailed, but the main idea is that Uncle Jack tells her, don't use that language in front of me, because this is not something I want to hear. So that was like, that was the main point that Uncle Jack communicated to her. Excuse me. Then at the end of the chapter, Scout, her brother, and her father are visiting their auntie. And then they're also visiting the auntie. Also, there is also Uncle Jack at that house, and then there is also the cousin Francis. He's almost the same age with the kids, so they're trying to play. And of course, Francis is very much against, once again, their political and racial perspective. And even as a child, he uses bad language, and he calls Scout's father and their family nigger lovers, and uses a lot of disrespectful racial connotations in the conversation with Scout. And also, so he calls her father a bad name, and he calls her friend Dill a bad name. About the Dill, he says that he is a stray dog, because Dill didn't have a father who lived with him, and all that situation in the family in the previous chapters you probably remember. So Scout now is exposed to these accusations from her cousin, who accuses her of supporting her father and of being a friend with Dill. And she becomes, as a normal child, she becomes extremely angry, so she punches her cousin in the face. There is a fight, and Uncle comes. When Uncle comes, Uncle does not care about whose side, who is right, who is wrong, but he just physical abuse of a child. His Scout, without even hearing her side of the story, and she is extremely angry and happy, and then she returns home, and basically that's the end of the chapter. Okay, so what I want you to do now is to concentrate on answering several questions. It's going to be some of them. It's going to be around 10 questions probably, and I'm going to help you. These are going to be the questions chapter 9 of a literary analysis of the story. So rather than just understanding the summary, now we're trying to analyze what is the writer trying to tell us, what are the themes, how characters develop in that chapter. Okay, so what I will do now, I will read questions to you, and I will try to lead you into analysis. Your assignment at the end of this video will be on OTUS, and it will be called OTUS Tequila Mockingbird, so TKAM chapter 9, so capital T, capital K, lowercase a, M, Tequila Mockingbird abbreviation, chapter 9. And you will need to show me your short response to the questions that we're going to discuss, and show the ability to use your literary analysis skills in this assignment. All right, let me read question number 1. And here we go. When Atticus speaks of defending Tom Robinson, he says, simply because we were licked 100 years before we started is no reason for us not to try to win. What was Atticus referring to? And question number 2, why would it be worthwhile to fight a battle that you know you're not going to win, or that you know that you're going to lose? So question number 1, what is he referring to? And question number 2, why would you fight the battle that you know that you will lose? Okay, well, we know that the story is happening, the setting in 1930, and we know that's the time of Great Depression. He's not referring to the Great Depression, but he's referring to the time before this Civil War, when the slavery was still there, and he's comparing the time when the slavery was legal to the time 1930 Great Depression. So that's what he's comparing. He says, okay, we don't have slavery anymore, we still have a lot of prejudice, and we still have people who disrespect those of different race or of different skin color. And he says that your population of the city, the mentality did not really change. So, and second question is, how or why on earth would you take a case as a lawyer that you know that you absolutely 100% will lose this case? And the perspective of Atticus is that he does not do this only for, he does it for society. He does it, of course, to show his position, but he also does it for himself, not to lose his personal self-respect, because he believes it's a good thing to fight for a good cause, even if you lose. Okay, question number 2. Think about Scout's fight with Francis and Atticus, in Atticus's message to Uncle Jack about children being able to spot an evasion quicker than adults. How do these two elements connected to the value of having Scout, a child, be the narrator of the story? Okay, so let me have a look once again. All right. Think about how Scout's fight with Francis and Atticus's message to Uncle Jack about you. Okay, so here is this question is a little bit complex. It consists of the first sentence consists of 2 parts. So we're comparing here Scout's fight with her cousin Francis on one side with the conversation of Atticus and his brother Jack, or Uncle Jack. So 2 events are being compared here. In the event number 1, we see how Scout is a young girl, but she is very socially and emotionally mature, and she is very capable of understanding a person who is different from her and accepting this person. That's a hard thing to do. Many adults are not capable of doing that. So on one side, so she was fighting with Francis, with her cousin, for the good cause, because he was accusing her of, you know the story. And on this side, we see 2 brothers, Atticus and Jack, Uncle Jack, are talking to each other, and they're talking about Scout, the little girl, the daughter of Atticus. So they're talking about her being able to understand social discrimination or racial discrimination much better than some adults do. So now the question here is, how is these 2 events make Scout a good narrator? We already spoke a lot about Scout as a narrator, and in one part of our conversation we mentioned that she is not 100% reliable narrator. We called her unreliable narrator because she's young, because she's a child, because she doesn't understand everything 100% properly. On the other hand, she is a wonderful narrator because being a child, she is not able to lie so much, especially about important things and events like racial discrimination, like things that she believed were true. So she was not spoiled as an adult, and she is a good narrator to portray the situation of the actual court, when the court starts, and the situation in the city in regards to racial discrimination. So that makes her a good narrator. The fact that she cannot lie, and that she's a child, and that she sees everything pretty fresh, all that stuff. Let's move on. Question number next. I don't see anything, but let me see. Actually, yeah, I see better now. All right. Atticus is worried about ugly things that the family will face in the next few months. So, what is the question? Although we haven't read the part of the story yet, what sorts of things do you suppose have Atticus worried about? Okay, so first of all, some of you read the whole book already. Second, we already discussed a lot about the whole plot of the story, so you know what happened at the end. For all those who don't know, it's a good thing to be able to learn to predict the story. And this is what it's all about. So you either predict what happens, the ugly things that Atticus is talking about, or you can, if you already know the story, just share what you think is important and what he was referring to, ugly things. So, and of course, I believe that you would be talking here about the attempt to murder, about the actual murder that happened, about the emotional assaults, about the physical assaults, and about all these things that happened after the court. Let's move on. Ugly things. Okay, number 4. Thinking back to earlier chapters, what do we know about the Ewells, the family of Ewells, E-W-E-L-L-S? From this chapter, what do we know about Tom Robinson? Given this, why would the townsfolk be more likely to accept Mr. Yule's testimony than Mr. Robinson? This is a weird question, but let's start with the beginning. What do we know about Yules? We know that they're a white family. We know that they're a family of what now probably can be called, not to offend anyone, white trash, because they are not a respectable family. They don't want to educate their children. They don't send their children to school. They are poor, but poor is not a sin. But they are not even cleaning their house. They're not cleaning their yard. They don't feed their children, don't care about them. They're dirty. So that's what they are. And they don't go to work, and the society or like the neighborhood, they just give them money, they just give them everything, and they just allow them to be who they are. That's the Ewells. Tom Robinson, on the other hand, is a black guy, is a black, respectable, black, honored black man. He also is poor, he is not rich, but he goes to church and he is respected by his neighbors. And we know how Calpurnia is the babysitter of Scout. She goes to the same church with Tom Robinson. And then she also believes that he's a very respectable and honored black guy. He works, he helps his neighbors, and he helped Jules as well. So why would society still choose to support the white guy? There is no other answer than just racial discrimination. Okay, according to Atticus, what is Macon's usual disease? That's quotation, usual disease. Why is he worried that his children will catch it? Well, of course, usual disease, we know of Macon is what? The racial, the inability to grow as a society, to get open to understanding of that actual racial stuff. And why is he afraid that his children can catch the disease? Well, obviously they live in that society and they're white children and they go to the same school and they have the same friends and everyone's a racist. And on the other hand, he is teaching them at home early on to share his racial and political perspective, not to catch the disease. Let's move on. Read the final sentence of the chapter. Explain in your own words what it means. In what way is his conversation with his brother also a message for his daughter? Okay, so I don't have the book here with me, so I cannot quote the last sentence, but you can do it on your own. It's the last sentence of chapter 9, and what's important there is that we understand how the writer and the narrator is not the same thing on one side. On the other side, we also know that the narrator, Scout, uses, it's like two scouts there. Scout number 1 is the child, and scout number 2 is the grown-up scout who is telling the story about her childhood. So we can already see different ages, right? And the story that this scout is telling us is a flashback of the memories of the young scout. So so this is important in narrative, and she understands this one, the older scout, the older narrator, understand. Let me have a look again. How her father is trying to give her several messages. So the first message he's trying to give her is that, and this is happening before the court. So the first message he's trying to give her is that, yes, there is going to have some trouble in the city. And I want you to know there's going to have some problems after the court. And I want you to be aware. Message number 2 that the father was telling her, I believe that you are strong enough not to be afraid of those troubles. There will be fights, not to be afraid of those fights. Not to be afraid of anything that will happen, because I believe in you that you're capable of making good choices. That's what her father is saying. And then he also says, I'm proud of you. He also says, there is like a wordplay a little bit here. There is a usage of the word judge. I believe in your judgment, that you're a good judge. But also, judge is like a word that's referring to the court that's going on. So that the judge is a good there. And there is one more thing is, we'll be talking about this later. Okay, so we're done with this part of the lesson, and we're moving on to our annotations. Ooh, annotations is a little harder. So I want you to pull out the paper that's called Close Reading Annotation, Tequila Mockingbird, Chapter 2 Close Reading. So we're going to use Chapter 2 Close Reading today. And you probably already played with it a little bit, but we're going to finish it now, and we'll do it all together because it's not easy to do it well. So I will walk you through the text, and I will explain to you how I would annotate this text if it was given to me as an assignment. And you can agree with me, you can annotate similar moments, similar parts and places. You can write your own ideas or can use some of mine if you agree with them. So let's start. So I'm reading and then I'm annotating. So when you see me using the marker in the air, means I'm like writing my own. So annotation is basically, there is a text and you underline a sentence or a word, and then you write your own understanding, interpretation, or opinion of what's going on in the text. And here we go. Then she went to the blackboard and printed the alphabet in enormous square capitals, turned to the class and asked, we're reading about the teacher, does anybody know what these are? Everybody did. Most of the first grade had failed it last year. Sure, I would absolutely annotate this portion. Most of the first grade had failed last year. Can you imagine how good the school is? So most of the class did not pass the first grade. I hope we're not like that. I really hope we're not. Okay, this also talks about the city, the society, the population, that their parents were not really capable of reading or writing, so they were not educated. They were not helping their students to pass through the alphabet level. Okay, let's move on. I suppose she chose me because she knew my name. I would circle or underline, she knew my name. Atticus Finch was a very important person in the city, and Finch, the last name of Finches, they were a very well-known family name. So this is important part of the paragraph. As I read the alphabet, a faint line appeared between her eyebrows. And after making me read the most of my first reader and the stock market quotations from the mobile register aloud, she discovered that I was literate and looked at me with more than faint distaste. I would absolutely circle or underline the whole sentence here, and I will tell that this is irony. It's extremely ironic. This is just the opposite of what we would want from a good teacher. How can a teacher not want her students to excel, to go above and beyond what she's doing in her classroom, and to be smarter and more capable than her expectations? This is weird. So this is absolutely ironic. Miss Carolyn told me to tell my father not to teach me anymore. It would interfere with my reading. What? Interfere with my reading? That's dumb. That's absolutely stupid. How can helping at home, how can a mother, a father, a family member, a friend, a tutor helping the student do anything bad by doing this? How is it bad that someone is helping you to excel at home? So no, absolutely not. Whatever your parents are doing, whatever your friends are doing, whatever your tutors are doing, whatever you're doing, your peers are doing, anytime you study at home more than you study at school, there's really nothing bad about it, okay? So I would absolutely annotate this. Let's move on. Teaching me, I said in surprise. He hasn't taught me anything, Miss Caroline. So of course this is not true, so I would also annotate this. Scout at that time doesn't understand that her father is actually teaching her in a fun way, by reading with her, to her, by allowing her to read. He does not teach her in such a boring way that she doesn't even notice. But yes, he teaches her. He teaches her a lot. Then she says that I added when Miss Caroline smiled and shook her head. Why? He's so tired at night. He just sits in the living room and reads. So this, I would also annotate this. That refers to how hard Atticus works. He works on behalf of the city, of his clients, of the people of Macomb. Okay, let's move on. Did you forget your lunch that second part. Did you forget your lunch this morning? Asked Miss Caroline. Walter, a boy classmate, looked straight ahead. I saw a muscle jumped in his skinny jaw. I would absolutely annotate this because what Scout is trying to do, she is trying to read facial expression of her classmate in order to understand what's going on in his mind. So she is trying to apply the theory of mind, what we talked about, the understanding of another person's mind by reading his facial expression. Okay, did you forget it this morning? Asked Miss Caroline. Walter's jaw twitched again. Yem, he finally mumbled. Of course, we know he is lying, so we can even annotate that if we want. He is lying. Boom, boom. Miss Caroline went to her desk and opened her purse. Here's a quarter, she said to Walter. Go and eat downtown today. You can pay me back tomorrow. Walter shook his head. No, thank you, ma'am, he drawled softly. Impatience crept into Miss Caroline's face. Here, Walter, come get it. Walter shook his head again. So we see how he is proud. His pride does not allow him to take money for his lunch, especially if he knows that he cannot pay that money back. Let's move on. When Walter shook his head a third time, someone whispered. We know that the classmates already respect Scout and believe that Scout can be a leader. So we can annotate that too. And we can write something like, her friends see her as a leader. Go on, tell her, Scout. I turned around and saw most of the town people and the entire bus delegation looking at me. Miss Caroline and I had conferred twice already, and they were looking at me in the innocent assurance that familiarity brings understanding. This is a complex sentence, but I believe that we can understand its meaning. Okay, she uses the word innocent, which means that they do not know the truth. The truth is not like that. What was so innocent about the children's belief? They believe that familiarity means if we know each other equals understanding. If we know each other, it also means that we understand each other. And Scout realized that that's not the case, especially in the case of the teacher, Miss Caroline, and herself, Scout. Yes, they already spoke a couple times. They already know each other, but there is no understanding. They still don't understand each other. So I would write a little note here that Scout noticed how her classmates were innocent. They did not understand that their reality is more complex than what they see. All right, let's move on. I rose graciously on Walter's behalf. Ah, Miss Caroline, what is Jean Louis? Miss Caroline, he is Cunningham. All right. Okay, so two important things here. She rose graciously on Walter's behalf. It absolutely reminds us of her father being a lawyer. She is almost fulfilling the work, not fulfilling the role. She's almost acting as a lawyer. She's trying to protect someone. In this case, she was trying to be an attorney to her friend. So another thing that is important here is the last sentence. Miss Caroline, he is Cunningham. So she already understands that there is a pride in this family. Yes, they're poor. Yes, they don't have enough, but he will not take her money because. So we can also write or annotate that she is a child, but she is capable to understanding much more things that her teacher can as an adult. Okay, let's move on. So our this annotation is our last part of the sentence of the last part of the lesson. So the only thing you need to know now is your homework assignment, and it is going to be due next time when I see you. And if you have any time left, which I doubt, then you are able to start your homework assignment now, but you for sure need to listen to the explanation to be able to learn or know what we're going to do. It's a lot of fun because we're going to be talking about cell phones or smartphones or whatever, iPhones or whatever phone you have. And your assignment will be to choose one of the three main characters, the kids, Scout, Gem, or Dill. So imagine you're a Scout or you're Gem or you're Dill. And you have your phone, so you'll need to decorate your phone and answer the questions. So what is the wallpaper? That's question number one. Question number one is the wallpaper. You actually are asked to draw the wallpaper. What kind of picture is there? Draw it as neatly as you can. Color it with markers, with whatnot. We're going to present those cell phones to our classmates, and then we'll choose the best ones for displaying in our classrooms. So question number 2 is email. So in the email box, write the number of emails the person got. In this case, I wrote 2 emails. Let me just explain to you what I chose. So for wallpaper, I chose the photo that Jem snapped of Scout and her father when they weren't looking. So it's Scout's favorite photo. So she made it her wallpaper or screensaver. Scout loves her father very much, and she, in her eyes, I mean, that's a wonderful picture here. So she always feels like he hugs her, and she feels very, very safe with her father. So you will actually need to write a short paragraph here explaining why you chose this particular picture and what's the meaning of it. So number 2, email, I chose Scout just received 2 messages. One from Calpurnia. Well, we know that Calpurnia is her, the cook and babysitter, but almost like a part of her family. And Calpurnia wants to know where Scout is because she is supposed to come to lunch and she's running late. And the second message she received from Dill, her friend, and he writes to her that my mother allowed me to come earlier for the summer break, and I'm so happy I will be able to see you soon. I will stay at my auntie's house, so try to make sure that you're there because I want to spend some time with you and their friends, you know. And then the last thing you need to do is, and that's a fun but also hard thing, and this is the playlist. So you need to choose several songs that you believe this person, this character of your choice would be willing to listen to on the iPhone or cell phone. I chose 3, and one is Why Can't We Be Friends by War, and I didn't know, maybe you're too young to know that song. The second song I chose, Just a Girl by No Doubt, and the third song I chose for her, Waiting on the World to Change by John Mayer. So Waiting on the World to Change. This one. Well, having said that, this is the end of this lesson. I want you to be able to find all the assignments on OTUS and finish them. Make sure you're trying your best on the cell phone assignment, homework assignment, and